Welcome back to the Manual Docker and .NET section of the Getting Started with Docker course. In this lesson, we're going to be adding a little bit of unit testing to our application just to see how we would incorporate that into the build process. So let's go to Visual Studio, and the first thing I'm going to do is create just a really simple little class just to have something to test. So I'm going to add right in the root a class. This is my typical test class called calculation. To properties, you'll see that it's a .NET Core 3.0 on my machine. Let's change it to 2.2 because we're using the 2.2 for the build system. So let's make sure that we don't use a 3.0, and that's going to be a problem. Now, normally I would delete this and start over, but let's just rename this file into calculation tests and calculation tests, like so. And now we'll change this. Well, let's just call this add should work. This is a really quick and dirty test harness just to show how to create a couple of tests to use. So we're going to actually pass in double X, double Y, and double expected. So you can make this into a theory. And we'll pass in inline data of, let's do 4. Put it back where it should go. And let's run these tests. It's going to build and run this project. It's going to do a restore. And it's now running my build. And we get a passing test, just one. Let's create 2 more. So this one's going to be 8 plus 3 is 11. And let's do one more. Let's make this 12 plus 13 is 25. Now if we run this again, just to make sure that it all runs, and it should, we have 3 passing tests. Okay, so there's our 3 passing tests working as intended. How do we make sure that the build process in Docker also handles the idea of making sure that these tests pass as well. Let's go to our Docker file. And in the Docker file, note that the first thing we do is we copy over just these two files. But we need to add one more. Copy ./testproj/testproj.csproj to ./testproj/. So basically mirroring this up here, but now we're including that additional project because we want to bring that over and include that in the restore. So now that we're done that, before we do a publish, because there's no reason to do a publish if we don't pass our tests, let's do a run .NET test. This is as easy as it is. ./testproj/testproj.csproj. Okay, so we're saying we're going to do a .NET test instead of .NET publish, .NET test, and pass in the path of our test project. That's it. That's all we got to do. So let's open up our PowerShell, which I still have open here. And we're going to do a build again. So we do Docker images. We're currently on 1.0.2. So let's do a Docker build-t for web app for 1.0.3. And I forgot the one thing that I always forget at some point, and that is to put the dot at the end. Okay, so now this is going to go through .NET restore, and that restored. And we did the full copy, and then we ran the .NET test. And then notice right down here, starting text execution, please wait. Test ran successful, total tests 3, passed 3, and the total time was just over a second. So it ran all 3 of those tests before it did the rest of the steps, which that's great. And we're happy to see that, but did it really matter if we ran our tests or not? Let's find out. Let's go back over to our tests, and let's change this to be 2.5. Well, 12 plus 13 is not 2.5. If we were to run this in our test explorer, we would get a broken test. It would say you got a failure. Let's find out. Yep, we've got our failure right here, where if we expand this out, expected says 2.5, the actual was 25. That's not what it should be. So we've got a broken test, but for whatever reason we decide, you know what? We're going to not look at our test pane or something, and we're going to try and make this work. We're going to build it. So I'm going to build the next version, 1.0.4, based upon this buggy new build. I hit enter, and it gets all the way down to the tests, which are new. So it's done a caching. Now and it says, whoa, we've got an error. One test failed, test run failed, and therefore, since it returned a non-zero code of 1, meaning it's a failure, it kicked us out to the console. It did not create the version 1.0.4 image. So if we clear the screen and do a Docker images, we see 1.0.3, but not a 1.0.4 because it failed because our unit tests failed. So that's how you can make sure that your unit tests get run before you do a publish, to make sure that you don't allow something out the door if you have failing tests. Okay, so we add our unit test. Now it's just a little bit of setup work, but then the actual work was to make sure we copied the project over beforehand to do the .NET Restore, .NET Restore, and then we also add this line right here, which is the .NET test. So run .NET test and pass in the test project. And that's all there is to adding unit testing into your Docker process. Okay, so that's it for this video. Let's move right into the wrap up for this section of our course.